Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking into something pretty significant, really quite urgent, actually.
Yes, it involves a whistleblower disclosure filed for Erez Reuveni, who's a long-serving attorney at the Department of Justice.
Right, a veteran DOJ attorney. And for this deep dive, our sources are reports from the Government Accountability Project, NPR, CBS News, and Al Jazeera. These all came out around June 24th, 2025. So our goal here is to really unpack these claims. There's serious allegations about, well, defying court orders at high levels, retaliation within the DOJ.
And what that all means fundamentally for the rule of law, for public service, it's quite something.
Exactly. And this stuff is, incredibly relevant if you're interested in how government actually works or doesn't work sometimes, the checks and balances.
And the ethics involved. What are the obligations when you're serving the public?
Absolutely. So let's really try to unpack this for you. First off, tell us a bit more about Erez Reuveni himself.
Sure. So he's not new to this. He's got 15 years at the DOJ, a respected record across different administrations, apparently.
Bipartisan record, yeah. And he was even acting deputy director of the Office of Immigration Litigation. OILL, they call it.
That's right. And what's really key here is the kind of disclosure this is. It's not just, an informal complaint.
It's a protected whistleblower disclosure. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means it carries legal weight and protections. It was formally sent up the chain to Congress, to the DOJ's own Inspector General, their internal watchdog.
Okay.
And also to the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, which is the independent body that specifically protects federal whistleblowers.
Got it. And this document, filed June 24th, lays out, what was the phrase? Grave allegations.
Of misconduct, abuse of authority, and unlawful retaliation. And these are pointed directly at senior DOJ and even White House officials.
Okay, so getting to the heart of it then.
Yeah.
Why does Mr. Reuveni say he was fired? What's the core reason, according to him?
Well, fundamentally, he says it was because he refused to follow directives that he believed flat out violated court orders.
So not just policy disagreements.
Yeah.
Actual court orders.
Yes, and also his ethical duties as a lawyer. It wasn't just about policy preferences. According to his account, it was about the law.
And his allegations seem to fall into a few main buckets.
That's right. We can break it down maybe into three main areas he points to. First, knowingly violating court injunctions to carry out deportations using the Alien Enemies Act.
Okay, that's a big one. What else?
Second, being directed, or having attorneys directed, to essentially mislead courts, suppress evidence in some pretty high-profile immigration cases.
Misleading courts.
Oh. And the third?
Retaliation.
Yeah.
Specifically, retaliation against him for refusing to file legal briefs that he felt contained misrepresentations. And also for, well, telling a federal judge the truth that a deportation had mistakenly happened.
So telling the truth got him in trouble is the allegation. That's the claim. And if this is true, it's not just about one person's job. It really makes you question the independence of career lawyers inside the DOJ. Are they guardians of the law, or are they just expected to follow political orders, even if they conflict?
Right. It hits at the foundations. There's a quote from Dana Gold, she's senior counsel at the Government Accountability Project, that seems to sum this up. She said, Mr. Reuveni's disclosures reveal a disturbing willingness by senior officials to undermine the rule of law for political ends.
That's a powerful statement.
It really is. When she says undermine the rule of law for political ends, what sort of specific things within the DOJ might be getting compromised there?
She's likely pointing to the bedrock principles, right? Things like actually obeying court orders, the lawyer's duty to be honest with the court candor, they call it.
Okay.
And of course, the rules against retaliating against whistleblowers. It's about whether the department prioritizes its legal mission or bends to political wins.
Let's dig into the specific examples then to really understand this. The first big one you mentioned involves the Alien Enemies Act. Can you set the scene for us?
Sure. So according to the disclosure, things really came to a head around March 14th, 2025. This was just before President Trump announced he'd be using this old law, the Alien Enemies Act.
A law hardly ever used from wartime.
Exactly, to speed up deportations. So there was allegedly this meeting on March 14th.
And who was there?
Well, critically, Emil Bov was there. At the time, he was the Principal Assistant Deputy Attorney General, and relevant now, he's been nominated for a federal appeals court judgeship, the Third Circuit.
Okay, so a high-level meeting. What does Reuveni claim happened?
Reuveni alleges that Bov was very emphatic, telling everyone there that, quote, the planes need to take off no matter what.
No matter what. That sounds intense.
It does. And then comes the really shocking part of the allegation. Reuveni claims Bove went further, suggesting the group might need to consider telling judges, well, the quote is explicit.
The sources reported it as if you.
Yes. Telling judges F you and just ignoring potential court orders that might try to block the deportations.
Wow. And Reuveni's reaction?
He says he was in disbelief. He notes others in the room seemed stunned as well. It paints a really stark picture, if true.
Okay, so that's the alleged meeting on the 14th. What happened immediately after?
The very next day, March 15th, a federal judge in D.C., James Boasberg, actually did issue an order. He temporarily blocked the use of the Alien Enemies Act.
So exactly what they were supposedly worried about.
Precisely. And Judge Boasberg specifically ordered planes already in the air carrying migrants under this act to return to the U.S.
And did they?
According to the reporting and the complaint, no. The administration allegedly didn't reroute the flights. They continued on and landed in El Salvador.
So a direct defiance of a court order, potentially.
That's the implication, and Judge Boasberg himself has since said there's probable cause for contempt of court proceedings against the government officials involved.
Though those proceedings are paused now because of appeals.
That's my understanding, yes. The legal battle is ongoing.
Now, it's crucial here. There's another side to this story, right? Regarding that March 14th meeting.
Absolutely. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who sources say was also at that meeting, has completely denied Reuveni's account.
What did he say?
He called Reuveni's claims utterly false. He stated very clearly that, quote, "At no time did anyone suggest a court order should not be followed."
Okay, so a flat denial. That really underscores the conflict here. It's one person's word against another's, at least regarding that specific comment.
It certainly complicates things. You have very different recollections of a key event.
And this wasn't the only incident Reuveni points to. There's another case involving a specific individual, Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yes, this is another significant part of the disclosure. Abrego Garcia was a man from El Salvador. He actually had a protection order that should have allowed him to stay in the U.S.
He had protection, but he was deported anyway.
He was. On March 15th, the same day as the judge's order we just discussed, he was sent to a prison in El Salvador known for pretty serious human rights abuses.
And what was the official explanation for that?
Officials later acknowledged it was an administrative error.
An error with huge consequences for him.
Yeah.
What role did Reuveni play in this, according to his complaint?
He says he tried repeatedly to get information. He repeatedly and consistently requested updates on Abrego Garcia's situation, asking for assurances of his safety.
Trying to follow up on the error.
Right. But he alleges he was basically stonewalled, told by his superiors to, quote, "stop asking for facts supporting any possible defense of the case."
Stop asking for facts.
And also to, quote, "cease making requests," essentially drop it.
But he didn't entirely drop it, did he? He ended up in court on this case.
He did, and this is where he made headlines. Reuveni went into court and conceded that Abrego Garcia should not have been removed from the U.S.
That's a major admission for a government lawyer representing the agency that did the removing.
A very major admission, and apparently it didn't go over well internally.
What happened then?
According to the disclosure, one of his supervisors questioned him afterwards, asking why he hadn't argued that Abrego Garcia was supposedly an alleged gang member trying to justify the deportation, essentially.
Trying to find a post hoc justification for the error.
That seems to be the implication. And then, when Reuveni was asked to sign an appeal brief trying to overturn the Maryland judge's order in the case, Judge Paulashinas,
Yes.
an appeal brief that did make those arguments about alleged gang membership, Reuveni refused.
He wouldn't sign it.
He allegedly said, quite simply, "I didn't sign up to lie."
Wow. I didn't sign up to lie.
Yeah.
That really puts it starkly.
It does. It speaks directly to that ethical conflict we talked about, the pressure attorneys might face when their professional duties clash with what they're being asked to argue.
And there was even a third instance mentioned relating to a different court order, this one from Massachusetts.
Yes, briefly mentioned. It seems he was trying to find out if the DOJ had violated another court order. This one blocked removing migrants to third-party countries without proper due process.
So asking questions again, how did that go?
Predictably, based on the other accounts, he says he was told to stop asking questions again by senior leaders.
You shut down.
And more than that, an assistant attorney general, Yakov Roth, allegedly called Reuveni specifically to tell him that Emil Bove, the same official from the Alien Enemies Act meeting, was very unhappy that Reuveni was digging into this.
Unhappy he was asking about potential violations of a court order.
Yes. And Roth also allegedly advised Reuveni to communicate by phone only where possible.
By phone. Why?
Well, the obvious assumption, and what's implied in the complaint, is to avoid creating a written record. No emails, no memos.
A paper trail. So it suggests an effort to keep things quiet, maybe obscure what was happening.
That's certainly the picture painted by the disclosure. It raises serious questions about transparency, accountability.
Okay, so after all this, the alleged pushback, the refusal to sign the brief, asking questions, what were the direct consequences for Mr. Reuveni?
It happened pretty fast. He was placed on administrative leave on April 5th, 2025.
Put on leave.
And then just 6 days later, April 11th, terminated. Fired without prior notice, according to the reports.
And what was the official reason given for firing a 15-year veteran attorney?
The termination letter, which was signed by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, listed 3 main reasons.
Okay, what were they?
1, failure to follow a directive from your superiors. 2, failure to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States.
Zealously advocate.
Okay.
And 3.
3, engaging in conduct prejudicial to your client, the client being the United States government.
So failure to follow orders, not fighting hard enough, and hurting the client's case. That's the official story.
That's the official justification provided.
But obviously Reuveni and his lawyers see it very differently.
Completely differently. His attorneys from the Government Accountability Project and Gilbert Employment Law put out a statement.
What do they emphasize?
They said, look, discouraging clients from engaging in illegal conduct is an important part of the role of a lawyer. That's fundamental.
Right. Standard legal ethics.
They argue Mr. Reuveni tried to do so and was thwarted, threatened, fired, and publicly disparaged for both doing his job and telling the truth to the court.
So they frame it as him being punished precisely for upholding his ethical and legal duties.
Exactly. A direct conflict between his professional obligations and alleged directives.
And he's not just accepting the termination, is he? He's fighting it.
No, he's filed an appeal. He's taken his case to the Merit Systems Protection Board.
Which is like the independent court for federal employment disputes.
Sort of, yes. An independent tribunal. And he's claiming violations of the Whistleblower Protection Act, arguing he was fired because he exposed wrongdoing.
Makes sense.
And also violations of the Civil Service Reform Act, which governs federal employment practices more broadly.
Okay. Now, zooming out a bit, this isn't just an employment dispute. It has wider political ripples, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially involving Emil Buff.
Absolutely. The timing was remarkable, really. The news about Reuveni's detailed complaint broke literally the day before Buff was scheduled for his Senate confirmation hearing.
His hearing for that seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals? Talk about timing.
Couldn't be more dramatic. And you can imagine the reaction in the Senate.
I bet. What are people saying?
Well, it's divided, as you might expect. Senator Dick Durbin, the Democrat chairing the Judiciary Committee, specifically thanked Reuveni for coming forward.
Okay.
Durbin said these allegations add to a troubling list of actions by Buff. He framed it as part of a broader pattern by the Trump administration to undermine the DOJ's commitment to the rule of law.
Strong words. Did he say what might happen with the nomination?
He warned of dire consequences if Buff gets confirmed. And Senator Cory Booker, another Democrat on the committee, was equally blunt, saying Buff has no respect for the rule of law.
So, strong opposition from Democrats, fueled by this whistleblower complaint. What about the other side, the DOJ?
The Justice Department issued a strong defense of Buff. They called him a relentless advocate for the enforcement of our immigration laws and the removal of violent killers, terrorists, gang leaders, and child predators. They essentially painted him as tough on crime and immigration.
And their view on his suitability for the judgeship.
They stated he will be an outstanding federal judge. So a complete contrast to the senator's views. It really highlights the political battle lines here.
It certainly does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with this really stark tension, aren't we?
Definitely. On one hand, you have the absolute crucial role that whistleblowers play. They shine a light on things happening inside government that maybe wouldn't come out otherwise.
Right, the potential misconduct.
But on the other hand, you have this complex balancing act that public servants, especially lawyers, have to navigate between their legal duties, their ethical codes, and inevitably political pressures and directives from above.
And the questions this raises are pretty fundamental for our whole system of justice, aren't they?
They really are. I mean, what does it actually mean for the rule of law if there are credible allegations? And remember, these are still allegations at this stage that court orders were deliberately ignored from within the Justice Department itself.
Yeah, the department whose name is Justice.
Exactly. And how does something like this affect public trust? Trust in institutions like the DOJ, which really rely on a perception of impartiality and commitment to law above politics.
Andrea Meza, another lawyer at Government Accountability Project, put it well. She said it's about whether the DOJ will uphold its name and mission or allow political pressure to override the law.
That sums up the core dilemma.
So as you've listened to all this, the details of the allegations, the specific cases, the denials, the political fallout, maybe take a moment to reflect. Consider what responsibility we have just as informed citizens to understand these principles, due process, government accountability, especially when faced with such conflicting stories from the highest levels. What part of these claims, these denials, stands out the most to you?